The doors of the Grand Assembly Chamber opened, and Ambassador David Cole stepped into a room that held the fate of 1,000 civilizations. He was the first human to ever stand in this place. The ceiling stretched so high above him that clouds actually formed near the top, drifting between pillars of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Representatives from over 800 alien species sat in tiered rows that curved around the massive circular floor, their eyes sensors, and other organs of perception, all focused on the single human walking toward the central platform. David kept his breathing steady. His heart pounded against his ribs, but he refused to let fear show on his face. Humanity had only discovered faster than light travel 30 years ago. They were children compared to species that had ruled the stars for millions of years. And now he stood before the Galactic Council, the supreme authority that governed all known space. The whispers began immediately. Clicking sounds, hissing voices, telepathic murmurs that made his translator implant buzz with fragments of conversation. So small, so fragile. Their planet is mostly water. Primitive conditions. Why does the Council waste time with this species? David reached the central platform and stood in the harsh spotlight that marked the speaker's position. Above him, on a raised throne of black metal, sat Supreme Arbiter Kolvax of the Dranathi Empire. His scaled face showed no expression, but his golden eyes held a contempt that needed no translation. "You may speak, human," Kolvax said. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Explain why your species deserves consideration for associate membership in the Galactic Council." David had prepared for this moment his entire career. He opened his mouth to begin his carefully crafted speech about human achievements, their desire for peace, their willingness to follow Council regulations. But Kolvax raised one clawed hand, silencing him before he could utter a single word. "Actually, I have changed my mind. The Council has already reached a decision regarding humanity." The Supreme Arbiter's lipless mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. "Your expansion into the Outer Rim territories has violated 17 different Council protocols. Your colonization efforts threaten the resource claims of established species. Your population growth is unsustainable and dangerous." David felt ice form in his stomach. "Supreme Arbiter, if we have violated any protocols, it was done in ignorance. We are willing to negotiate, to make amends, to find solutions that benefit all parties." Laughter rippled through the chamber. It was not a kind sound. Kolvax leaned forward on his throne. "You do not understand, human. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to deliver judgment." He pressed a symbol on his throne, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, the blue and green jewel that 8 billion humans called home. "Your species has been judged as a threat to galactic stability. The penalty is pacification." David's blood ran cold. He knew that word. Every diplomat in human space knew that word. Pacification was the Council's term for planetary bombardment, for genocide. "You cannot do this," David said, his voice shaking despite his efforts to control it. "We have done nothing to deserve extinction. We have harmed no one." "You exist," Kolvax replied simply. "That is enough. Species like yours, aggressive and fast-breeding, always become problems eventually. We have learned it is better to deal with such threats early." The chamber erupted in sounds of approval. Hundreds of alien representatives voiced their support for the decision. David looked around desperately, searching for any face that showed sympathy, any species that might speak in humanity's defense. He found none. "The Dranathi Third Fleet will depart for your solar system within one standard rotation," Kolvax announced. "The human colonies in the Outer Rim will be sterilized. Your homeworld will be reduced to ash. This is the will of the Council." David stood frozen on the platform. His mind raced through every diplomatic option, every possible argument, every trick and tactic he had learned in 20 years of service. None of them would work here. The council had already decided. They had probably decided before he even entered the chamber. This had never been a hearing. It had been a formality. "I have one question," David said, and something in his voice made even Kolvax pause. "Do you know why humanity has followed your rules so carefully? Why we have kept our technology primitive by your standards? Why we have been so eager to cooperate?" Kolvax's golden eyes narrowed. "Because you are weak. Because you fear us? No." David's voice had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by something cold and hard. "Because we hoped we were wrong about you. We hoped that you were better than the empires that came before you. We hoped that the galaxy might actually be a place where different species could coexist in peace." He looked directly into the Supreme Arbiter's eyes. "You have answered that hope with a death sentence for our entire species. You have shown us exactly what you are. And what will you do about it, human?" Kolvax asked mockingly. "You have no fleet capable of stopping us. You have no weapons that can threaten our ships. You are insects beneath our feet." David smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Do you know what insects do when you step on their nest? They swarm. They sting. They do not stop until the threat is destroyed, or they are all dead." He turned and walked toward the chamber doors, ignoring the shouts and demands to stop. Guards moved to block his path, but something in his eyes made them hesitate just long enough for him to pass Dot at the threshold. He paused and looked back at the assembled might of the Galactic Council. "You have made a terrible mistake today," he said quietly. "You think you know what humanity is capable of. You think you understand our limits." He shook his head slowly. "You understand nothing. And by the time you learn the truth, it will be far too late." The doors closed behind him. 3 weeks later, the Dranathi Third Fleet arrived in Earth's solar system. 200 warships against humanity's pitiful defense force of 40 vessels. The battle lasted less than 2 hours. Every human ship was destroyed. Then the bombardment began. The Council watched the footage with satisfaction as human cities burned. New York vanished in a flash of light. Paris crumbled to dust. Tokyo became a crater filled with radioactive glass. One by one, the great works of human civilization were erased from existence. When the bombardment ended, 5.3 billion humans were dead. The survivors crawled from underground shelters and remote locations to find their world forever changed. But something else had changed too. Something that the Council, in their arrogance and contempt, had failed to consider Dot in hidden facilities across the solar system, in secret bases that no alien scanner had ever detected. Humanity began to prepare its response. They had tried peace. They had tried diplomacy. They had tried to be good galactic citizens. Now they would try something else. Dot Ambassador David Cole stood in a command center deep beneath the frozen surface of Europa, watching the final casualty reports scroll across his screen. His wife, his children, his parents, his friends, all gone, reduced to atoms by the Council's judgment. A military officer approached him. General Maria Santos, commander of what remained of humanity's armed forces. "The emergency protocols have been activated," she reported. "All surviving military personnel are reporting to hidden bases. The shipyards are beginning production." "How long until we are ready?" David asked. 18 months. Maybe less if we push hard." David nodded slowly. His eyes were dry. He had no tears left. "Then we push hard," he said. "We push until we break. And then we push harder." He turned to face the general, and she saw something in his expression that made her take a step back. "They wanted to teach us a lesson about power," David said softly. "About our place in the galaxy. About what happens to species that challenge their authority." His hands curled into fists at his sides. We are going to teach them a lesson too. A lesson they will never forget. A lesson that will echo through the stars until the end of time. Outside the base, in the cold darkness of space, humanity began to gather its strength. The galaxy had thought them broken. The Council had thought them finished. They were wrong. They would learn the true cost of that mistake. Galactic Council Chamber had returned to its normal business within a month after Earth's bombardment. Representatives from 800 species debated trade agreements, territorial disputes, and resource allocations as if nothing unusual had happened. The human extinction was already becoming a footnote in galactic history. Another primitive species that had been dealt with before it could become a problem. Supreme Arbiter Kolvax sat on his throne, listening to a Finari delegate complain about mining rights in the outer systems. His mind wandered to other matters. The Dranathi Empire had grown stronger with the elimination of humanity. Their reputation as the enforcement arm of the Council had been reinforced. Other ambitious species would think twice before challenging Council authority. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. His personal aide, a slender Dranathi named Torvek, appeared at his side with a data tablet. Supreme Arbiter, there is a matter requiring your attention. Kolvax waved dismissively. It can wait until the session ends. I do not believe it can, Supreme Arbiter. Torvak's voice carried an unusual tension. Our monitoring stations in the Outer Rim have detected something strange. All human colony worlds have gone dark. Kolvax frowned. Define dark. Silent. Empty. Our patrol ships have investigated 3 former human settlements. Every structure is abandoned. Every ship is gone. It appears the surviving humans have simply vanished. A cold sensation crept up Kolvax's spine, but he pushed it aside. They are probably hiding in some remote corner of space, licking their wounds. They are no longer a concern. There is more, Supreme Arbiter. Torvik hesitated before continuing. Our intelligence network has received reports from 47 different species. They all describe the same thing. Human agents making contact, asking questions, offering information. What kind of information? Information about Council operations, patrol schedules, fleet deployments, the locations of military installations. Torvak's scales had gone pale. Someone is gathering intelligence on us, Supreme Arbiter. A great deal of intelligence. Kolvax sat very still for a long moment. Then he activated his private communication channel to Fleet Commander Dravok, the officer who had led the attack on Earth. Commander, I want every available ship searching for human survivors. Find out where they have gone and what they are planning. It will be done, Supreme Arbiter. But finding humanity proved far more difficult than Kolvax had anticipated. His scouts searched hundreds of systems. They found abandoned stations, empty cargo containers, cold trails that led nowhere. The humans had disappeared like ghosts, leaving nothing behind but silence and shadows. Meanwhile, in a hollowed-out asteroid hidden in the depths of an uncharted nebula, Admiral Victoria Nash studied holographic displays showing the positions of every Dranathi warship in the galaxy. Their patrols are predictable, she observed. Same routes, same schedules, same formations. They have grown comfortable. General Santos nodded from her position at the tactical station. They believe we are defeated. They are not even looking for a threat. That will change soon enough. Nash turned to face the assembled command staff. 32 officers representing every branch of humanity's military forces. The best minds that had survived the bombardment. Status report on fleet construction. Chief Engineer Robert Kim pulled up a series of schematics. The shipyards on Titan, Ganymede, and Europa are operating at maximum capacity. We have completed 412 combat vessels, with another 200 in various stages of construction. Weapon systems? Everything we were forbidden to build under Council regulations is now in production. Antimatter torpedoes, quantum disruption cannons, gravitational implosion warheads. Kim's expression was grim. We had the theoretical knowledge for decades. The Council just never let us develop it. They wanted to keep us weak and dependent. Ambassador Cole entered the command center, his face drawn and tired. He had not slept properly since Earth burned. None of them had. "I have news from our contacts," he announced. "The Vanari Collective has agreed to look the other way when we move through their territory. The Krethian Trade Guild will provide fuel and supplies in exchange for post-war considerations. The Morvathi Resistance has offered to share their intelligence on Dranathi fleet movements." Nash raised an eyebrow. "How did you convince them to help us?" "I did not have to convince them of anything. The Council has oppressed these species for centuries. They have been waiting for someone to challenge Dranathi dominance." Cole's voice hardened. "We are not the first civilization the Council has tried to exterminate. We are simply the first one that survived well enough to fight back." A young officer named Lieutenant James Wong looked up from his station. "Admiral, I have a question. When we strike back, what are our rules of engagement? Do we target military installations only? Do we accept surrenders?" The command center fell silent. Every eye turned to Admiral Nash Dot. She thought about the question for a long moment. She thought about the footage she had watched 1,000 times. Human cities burning. Children screaming as fire fell from the sky. Hospitals and schools and homes reduced to radioactive craters. The Dranathi did not discriminate between military and civilian targets when they attacked Earth, she said quietly. They did not accept our surrender. They did not show mercy to the innocent. Her eyes swept across the room, meeting the gaze of each officer in turn. "We will give them exactly what they gave us. Nothing more. Nothing less." No one argued. No one protested. They had all lost too much to feel mercy for those who had taken everything from them. Over the following months, humanity's hidden fleet grew stronger. Volunteers from survivor communities trained in combat tactics and weapon systems. Scientists developed new technologies that the Council had forbidden. Engineers built ships designed for one purpose only: to destroy. Ambassador Cole continued his diplomatic work, building a network of allies and informants that stretched across half the galaxy. Species that had suffered under Council rule whispered secrets to human agents. Trade routes were mapped. Defense systems were analyzed. Weaknesses were identified. And then, exactly 18 months after Earth burned, Admiral Nash called her fleet to battle stations. "This is it," she announced over the fleet-wide communication channel. "For 18 months, we have prepared. We have trained. We have built. Now it is time to show the galaxy what humanity is made of." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The Council believes we are broken. The Dranathi believe they have won. They are about to learn how wrong they are." She turned to her tactical officer. "Set course for the Dranathi border colony of Carvix Prime. Maximum speed." "Admiral," the officer replied, "Carvix Prime has a population of 90 million. It is primarily a civilian world." Nash's expression did not change. "I am aware." The fleet moved into formation. 600 warships, bristling with weapons that should not exist, crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose. Supreme Arbiter Kolvax received the alert as he was preparing for sleep. A massive energy signature had been detected at the edge of Dranathi space. Hundreds of ships, moving fast, heading directly for one of his colony worlds. "That is impossible," he breathed. "The humans cannot have built a fleet. They do not have the resources." But the sensor data did not lie. The humans were coming. And they were not coming to negotiate. Kolvax scrambled to mobilize his forces. But deep in his heart, He knew he was already too late. The predator he thought he had killed had risen from its grave, and it was hungry for revenge. Governor Thrax of Carvix Prime was enjoying his evening meal when the sky turned white. Through the panoramic windows of his dining hall, he watched in frozen horror as massive warships materialized from faster-than-light, traveled directly in orbit above his world. Hundreds of them, more than he could count, their hulls painted black as the void between stars. His communicator screamed with emergency alerts. His military advisors shouted warnings and requests for orders. Defense platforms activated across the planet, their weapon systems coming online for the first time in decades. That it did not matter. The human fleet did not wait for Carvix Prime to organize its defenses. They did not issue demands or warnings. They did not offer any chance to surrender. They simply opened fire. Beams of concentrated antimatter sliced through the orbital defense stations like they were made of paper. Gravitational torpedoes struck the surface, creating craters that swallowed entire cities. The planetary shield generator, pride of Dranathi engineering, collapsed under a sustained barrage that turned the installation into a pillar of fire reaching towards space. Governor Thrax managed to reach his emergency bunker before the bombardment reached his capital city. He huddled in the reinforced chamber, listening to the thunder of explosions above, watching status reports that showed nothing but destruction and death. His world was dying, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. On the bridge of the flagship Retribution, Admiral Victoria Nash watched the attack unfold on her tactical display. Her face showed no emotion. Her hands did not tremble. "Bombardment is proceeding as planned," reported her tactical officer. 73% of military targets have been neutralized. Civilian casualties are estimated at 12 million and rising. "Continue until all targets are eliminated," Nash ordered. Lieutenant Wong, the young officer who had asked about rules of engagement, stood at his station with a pale face. "Admiral, we are receiving distress calls from the surface. Hospitals, schools, refugee centers. They are begging for mercy." Nash turned to look at him. Her eyes held a darkness that made him take a step back. Did the Dranathi respond to our distress calls when they burned Earth? Did they spare our hospitals and schools? She turned back to the tactical display. "Continue bombardment." Wong opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. He thought of his own family, vaporized in the attack on Tokyo. He thought of the footage that played on every human news channel, showing children burning in their classrooms. He said nothing more. When the bombardment finally ended, Carvix Prime was a shattered ruin. 90 million Dranathi had lived on that world. Less than 2 million survived, crawling from the wreckage of what had been a thriving civilization. But humanity was not finished. The fleet split into strike groups, each targeting a different Dranathi world. They hit colony after colony, leaving naught but destruction in their wake. Shipyards were vaporized. Military bases were reduced to craters. Communication relays were destroyed, cutting off entire sectors from the rest of the Empire. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session as reports flooded in from across Dranathi space. "This is impossible," declared Councillor Feneth of the Morvathi Dominion. "How did the humans build such a fleet? Where did they get these weapons?" Supreme Arbiter Kolvax stood before the assembly, his scales gray with stress, his golden eyes haunted by something that might have been fear. "They were hiding their true capabilities," he admitted. "For decades, they pretended to be a primitive species, following our regulations, accepting our restrictions. It was a deception. Then we must crush them now before they grow stronger," shouted another counselor. "Send the Grand Fleet. Wipe them out once and for all." Kolvax nodded slowly. "The Grand Fleet is being mobilized. 5,000 warships, the largest force assembled in 3 centuries. We will hunt down every human vessel and destroy them." But even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at his mind. The humans had surprised them once. They had built weapons the Council had never seen before. They had struck with a ferocity and precision that suggested careful planning and perfect intelligence. What else were they hiding? Fleet Commander Dravok led the Grand Fleet into the outer territories, searching for the human forces. His scouts ranged ahead, probing every system. Scanning every nebula dot, they found the human fleet waiting for them in the Korath expanse, a region of space filled with dense asteroid fields and electromagnetic interference. It was terrible ground for a conventional battle, limiting sensor range and restricting maneuver options. But Dravok had overwhelming numbers. 5,000 ships against the human fleet of 600. It should have been a simple matter of surrounding the enemy and crushing them with superior firepower. "All vessels advance," he commanded. "Formation Alpha 7. We end this today." The Dranathi fleet surged forward, weapons charging, shields at maximum. They closed the distance rapidly, eager to engage and destroy the upstart humans who had dared to strike at their empire. And then the humans revealed their trap, hidden among the asteroids. Disguised as debris and rock were hundreds of automated weapon platforms. They activated simultaneously, pouring fire into the flanks of the Dranathi formation. At the same time, the human warships unleashed a weapon that had never been used in galactic warfare. Engineer Kim had called it the Cascade Effect. It was based on principles of quantum entanglement that the Council scientists had declared impossible. A single warhead could trigger a chain reaction that spread from ship to ship, disrupting the fundamental forces that held matter together. The first Cascade torpedo struck the Dranathi flagship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the ship began to glow with an eerie blue light that spread outward in all directions. Every vessel the light touched began to glow as well, the effect cascading through the tightly packed fleet like ripples in a pond. Ships simply came apart. Not exploding, but dissolving, their hulls breaking down into component atoms that scattered into the void. Crew members died instantly, their bodies unraveling along with everything else. Fleet Commander Dravok had just enough time to transmit one final message before his ship ceased to exist. God save us. They have broken the laws of physics themselves. In less than 3 minutes, the Grand Fleet was gone. 5,000 warships. 3 million crew members. The greatest military force the Dranathi Empire had ever assembled. Erased. Admiral Nash watched the aftermath on her display, her face still showing no expression. "Confirm total destruction of enemy fleet," she ordered. "Confirmed, Admiral." "No surviving vessels detected." She nodded slowly. "Set course for Nexera Prime. It is time to end this." In the Galactic Council chamber, Supreme Arbiter Kolvax received the news of the Grand Fleet's destruction. His scales had gone completely white. His claws dug into the arms of his throne, hard enough to draw blood. "That is not possible," he whispered. "That is not possible." But it was. And now there was nothing standing between the human fleet and the heart of Council Space. Counselor Feneth rose from his seat, his face twisted with terror. "We must negotiate. We must offer terms. We must do something." "They will not negotiate," Kolvax replied, his voice hollow and distant. "We taught them that lesson ourselves when we rejected their ambassador. We showed them that mercy was weakness and diplomacy was for fools." He looked out at the assembled representatives of 800 species, the rulers of 1,000 civilizations. Now they are going to show us what they learned. Outside the chamber windows, the first human ships appeared in orbit above Nexera Prime. The siege had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The siege of Nexera Prime entered its 5th day, and the Galactic Council watched helplessly as their world was slowly strangled. Human warships formed an unbreakable blockade in orbit, destroying any vessel that attempted to escape or approach. Supply lines were cut. Communications were jammed. The great capital of galactic civilization had become a prison. Supreme Arbiter Kolvax stood at the window of his private chamber, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, among those distant points of light, the human fleet waited with weapons that could unmake reality itself. He had not slept in days. He had not eaten. He simply stood and watched and waited for the end. His aide Torvek entered quietly. Supreme Arbiter, the Council has assembled. They are demanding answers. What answers can I give them? Kolvax replied without turning. We attacked a species that wanted nothing but peace. We murdered billions of their people for the crime of existing. We laughed as their cities burned. His voice cracked. And now they have come to collect the debt we owe them. There must be something we can do. Some way to stop this. Kolvax finally turned to face his aide. His golden eyes, once bright with power and certainty, were dull and lifeless. I thought I understood power, he said softly. I thought it came from ships and weapons, and the ability to destroy. I was wrong. He shook his head slowly. True power comes from having nothing left to lose. The humans have lost everything. Their home, their families, their future. What can we possibly threaten them with? In the council chamber, panic had set in. Representatives from 800 species screamed at each other, demanded action, pointed fingers of blame. Some called for immediate surrender. Others insisted on continued resistance. A few even suggested using weapons of mass destruction on the human fleet. Consequences be damned. Councillor Feneth of the Morvathi Dominion tried to restore order. But his voice was drowned out by the chaos. Then the holographic display at the center of the chamber activated without authorization. Every screen in the room flickered and changed to show a single human face. Admiral Victoria Nash looked out at the assembled rulers of the galaxy with eyes as cold as the void itself. Good evening, counselors, she said, her voice calm and measured. I hope I have not interrupted anything important. The chamber fell silent. 800 species stared at the image of the human commander who had brought their civilization to its knees. What do you want? Counselor Feneth demanded. Name your terms. We will negotiate. Nash smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Negotiate? That is an interesting choice of words. When your ambassador came to our leader before the attack on Earth, begging for peace, what did Supreme Arbiter Kolvax say? I believe his exact words were, "We are not here to negotiate. We are here to deliver judgment." She leaned forward slightly. So that is what we are here to do. Deliver judgment. Please, another counselor begged. We were wrong. We made a terrible mistake. We can make amends. We can pay reparations, return territory, do whatever you ask. Whatever we ask? Nash's voice hardened. Can you bring back the 5 billion humans who died in your attack? Can you resurrect the children who burned in their schools? Can you rebuild the art and culture and history that you reduced to ash? The chamber was silent. I did not think so. Nash straightened. Here are your terms. All Dranathi military forces will surrender unconditionally. The Dranathi Empire will be dissolved. Supreme Arbiter Kolvax and the senior members of his government will be handed over to human custody to face trial for crimes against humanity. All species that participated in or supported the attack on Earth will pay tribute to the human government for the next 300 years. And if we refuse? Kolvax asked. He had entered the chamber during the transmission. Standing alone at the entrance, like a ghost of his former self, Nash fixed him with her cold gaze. Then we will demonstrate the Cascade weapon on your homeworld. Nextra Prime will cease to exist. Every living thing on this planet will be unmade at the atomic level. And then we will do the same to every Dranathi world until your species is extinct. You would commit genocide? Someone shouted. You would become the very thing you claim to hate. We learned from the best, Nash replied. You taught us that mercy is weakness. You taught us that the strong do what they will, and the weak suffer what they must. You taught us that the only way to survive in this galaxy is to be willing to do whatever it takes. She spread her hands. Congratulations. We were excellent students. The transmission ended. The council chamber erupted in chaos once more, but this time the voices carried a defier. N2 tone, not anger or defiance, but defeat. Kolvax walked slowly to his throne and sat down for the last time. Around him, species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia argued about surrender terms, about who would be sacrificed to appease the humans, about how to salvage something from the ruins of their civilization. He ignored them all. He was thinking about the day, a little over 2 years ago, when he had looked down at a single human ambassador and dismissed him as an insect. He had been so certain of his power then, so confident in the natural order of things that now he understood the truth. There was no natural order. There was only power and the will to use it. Humanity had both, and they would reshape the galaxy according to their own design. A soft chime indicated an incoming private transmission. Kolvax accepted it without thinking. Ambassador David Cole's face appeared on his personal screen. The human diplomat who had stood before the council and watched as his world was condemned to death. The man who had warned them that they were making a terrible mistake. Supreme Arbiter, Cole said, I wanted to speak with you personally before the end. To gloat? Kolvax asked bitterly. No. Cole's expression was unreadable. To ask you a question. When you gave the order to attack Earth, did you ever consider what would happen if you failed to kill all of us? Did you ever imagine that we might survive and seek revenge? Kolvax was silent for a long moment. No, he admitted finally. I did not think it was possible. Your species seemed so weak, so fragile. I thought you would simply accept your fate. That was your mistake, Cole said quietly. You saw our desire for peace as weakness. You saw our restraint as fear. You did not understand that we held back our true capabilities because we wanted to believe the galaxy could be a place of cooperation and mutual respect. He leaned closer to the screen. You taught us that we were wrong. You taught us that the only language the galaxy understands is violence. And now you will live with the consequences of that lesson. What will happen to my people? Kolvax asked. It was the first time he had ever concerned himself with the fate of anyone other than himself. They will survive, Cole replied. Diminished, humbled, stripped of power. But alive? We are not going to exterminate your species, Kolvax. We are not monsters. Then why? Why all of this destruction? Cole's eyes hardened. Because you needed to learn. You needed to understand that there are some lines that should never be crossed. You needed to feel in your own flesh what it is like to lose everything. He paused. And because humanity needed to know that we would never be victims again, that anyone who threatens our people will face consequences so terrible that no species will ever dare to attack us. The transmission ended. Kolvax sat alone in the darkness, listening to the distant sounds of chaos in the council chamber. Outside, the human fleet maintained its silent vigil. They did not need to attack. They had already won. All that remained was for the galaxy to accept its new masters. The surrender ceremony took place in the ruins of the Grand Assembly Chamber. On Nexera Prime, human, soldiers stood at attention along the walls, their weapons held ready, their faces blank and unreadable. Above them, through the shattered dome that had once displayed artificial clouds, the real sky was visible. Scarred by smoke from fires that still burned across the capital city, Supreme Arbiter Kolvax walked slowly to the central platform where he had once pronounced humanity's death sentence. His robes were torn and dirty. His scales had lost their luster. His golden eyes stared at nothing as he approached the table where the surrender documents waited. Admiral Victoria Nash stood on the other side of the table, flanked by Ambassador David Cole and General Maria Santos. Behind them, representatives of the species that had allied with humanity watched in silence. The Vanari, the Krethian, the Morvathi, and dozens of others who had suffered under Council rule for centuries. "Sign," Ash commanded. There was no ceremony to her voice, no triumph or satisfaction, just cold efficiency. Kolvax picked up the stylus and pressed it to the document. His claw trembled as he marked his name, formally ending the Dranathi Empire that had dominated the galaxy for 10,000 years. One by one, the other surviving council members stepped forward and added their signatures. Each one represented a species that had voted in favor of Earth's destruction. Each one now accepted the terms humanity had dictated. When the last signature was complete, Nash nodded to her officers. "Take him into custody. His trial will begin in 3 standard weeks." Guards stepped forward and placed restraints on Kolvax's wrists. He did not resist. As they led him away, he paused and looked back at Nash. "Do you feel it?" he asked quietly. "The satisfaction of victory? The joy of revenge?" Nash met his gaze without expression. "I feel nothing," she replied. "Everything I loved burned with earth. You cannot feel joy when you have nothing left to feel joy about." Kolvax nodded slowly. "Then we have both lost everything." "No," Ash said. "You have lost everything. We have survived. That is the difference." The guards led him away. He did not look back again. In the months that followed, humanity reshaped the galaxy according to their own design. The old council was dissolved, replaced by a new assembly where every species, regardless of size or power, had an equal voice. The Dranathi Empire was broken into a dozen smaller territories, each forbidden from maintaining military forces, larger than a planetary defense fleet. Species that had been oppressed under Council rule were granted independence and reparations. Trade routes that had been monopolized by the elder races were open to all. Technologies that had been restricted to keep younger species weak were made freely available. Ambassador Cole became the first speaker of the new Galactic Assembly. He stood before the gathered representatives on the anniversary of Earth's destruction, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "1 year ago today, our world burned. Our people died by the billions. Everything we had built over thousands of years of civilization was reduced to ash in a matter of hours." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the assembly. "We could have responded with extinction. We could have wiped out every species that raised a hand against us. Our weapons were capable of it. Our rage demanded it." His eyes swept across the assembled aliens, many of whom still looked at humans with fear. "But we chose a different path, not because we forgave what was done to us. We will never forgive. We will never forget. But because we remembered what we were fighting for in the first place. Not conquest, not domination, but a galaxy where different species could live in peace." He gestured to the chamber around him. "This assembly represents a new beginning. Here, no species is superior to another. Here, no civilization can condemn another to extinction simply because they are young or different or inconvenient. Here, the strong protect the weak instead of preying upon them." Cole's expression hardened. "But let me be clear about one thing. Humanity's restraint is not weakness. Our mercy is not permission. If any species ever threatens our people again, if any power ever attempts to do to us what the Dranathi did, they will face the full measure of human retribution." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. "We came to the stars hoping to find friends. You gave us enemies instead. We have dealt with those enemies. But our capacity for destruction remains. Our memory remains. Our resolve remains." He straightened. "Choose wisely how you proceed. We are watching." The assembly fell into absolute silence. Every species present understood the message. Humanity had proven itself capable of mercy and genocide in equal measure. The choice of which they received would depend entirely on how they treated the humans in the future. Admiral Nash retired after the war, settling on a small colony world far from the centers of galactic politics. She spent her days tending a garden, growing vegetables and flowers from Earth seeds that had been preserved in emergency vaults. Sometimes she would sit on her porch as the sun set, watching the stars appear one by one. General Santos visited her occasionally. On one such visit, the general found Nash staring at the sky with tears running down her weathered cheeks. "Regrets?" Santos asked softly. Nash wiped her eyes and shook her head. "Not regrets. Just sadness. I think about all the lives we took, all the families we destroyed, all the children who will never be born because of what we did. They started it, yes, and we finished it." Nash turned to look at her old friend. "But that does not mean it was right. It just means it was necessary. There is a difference." Santos sat down beside her. "Do you think we went too far?" Nash was silent for a long moment. "I think we did exactly what we had to do to survive. I think if we had shown weakness, they would have found us eventually and finished what they started. I think the galaxy only respects strength, and we had to prove we were strong." She looked back at the stars. "But I also think we lost something in the process. Some part of our humanity that we can never get back. We wanted to be explorers and scientists and artists. Instead, we became conquerors and destroyers." "We can still be those other things," Santos said. "The war is over. We can build something better now. Maybe." Nash did not sound convinced. "Or maybe we have just become another empire, destined to rule through fear until someone stronger comes along and does to us what we did to the Drenathi on Nexera Prime, in a prison cell designed to hold the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy." Former Supreme Arbiter Kolvax wrote his final testament. His trial had ended a week earlier. He had been found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to spend the rest of his life in isolation. The document he wrote was addressed to future generations of all species. It was a warning, a confession, and a plea. "I ruled the galaxy for 300 years. I commanded fleets that could shatter worlds. I spoke, and civilizations trembled. I believed I was untouchable, that my power was absolute and eternal. I was wrong. The humans taught me the truth about power. It is not found in ships or weapons or armies. It is found in the will to endure any suffering, sacrifice anything, do anything, to protect what you love. The humans lost everything, and instead of breaking them, it set them free. Free from fear, free from restraint, free from the weakness of hope. That is what made them unstoppable. They had nothing left to lose and nothing left to fear. They could not be threatened, because every threat we made was laughable compared to what we had already done to them. They could not be bought, because no treasure could replace what we had taken. They could not be defeated, because they were already dead inside, animated only by the cold fire of revenge. To any species that reads this in the ages to come, I offer one piece of advice. Do not provoke the humans. Do not threaten their homes. Do not harm their children. They will smile and trade with you. They will send ambassadors and sign treaties. They will seem peaceful and reasonable and civilized. But beneath that surface lies something ancient and terrible. something that sleeps until awakened by loss and pain, something that will not stop until every enemy is destroyed or they themselves are dead. I awakened that thing. I paid the price. Let my fate serve as a warning to all who come after. The humans call themselves Homo sapiens, wise man, but there is another name that better describes what they truly are. Apex predator. Never forget it. He set down his pen and stared at the walls of his cell. Outside, somewhere in the vast galaxy, humanity continued to build its new civilization. They established colonies on 100 worlds. They developed technologies that would have seemed like magic to the species that once ruled the stars. They created art and music and literature that explored the depths of the soul, and they remembered. Every year, on the anniversary of Earth's destruction, they gathered to honor the dead and renew their vow. Never again. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity had survived, and the stars themselves seemed to whisper a warning to any who might forget. Do not make the same mistake twice. The humans are watching, and they never forgive.